Good afternoon and welcome to our next session on Channel World Seed. We are celebrating 100 years of the International Seed Federation and the commemorative book which has been launched at the Congress.
It's not working.
Oops. Sorry, excuse me. Oh, we'll start again. Nice and clear. Good afternoon and welcome to our next session at Channel World Seed. We are celebrating 100 years of the International Seed Federation and the commemorative book which has been launched at the Congress. I am joined by a very special guest this afternoon, who is the former Secretary General of ISF and Honorary Life Member, Bernard Le Buanec, who has offered a number of the chapters in this book. Bernard, how does it feel to be marking 100 years at the Congress?
Excuse me?
How does it feel to be marking 100 years at the Congress?
Well, I'm sorry, but I don't understand what you say.
How does it feel to be celebrating 100 years?
Of course, yes, celebrating 100 years is extremely important because you have not many international organizations that are 500 years old. And during 100 years, you have had a lot of evolutions, you know, and it is interesting to see how the seed industry has evolved during the past 100 years. And that is the reason why it's important to just recognize that. And I think that that little book is interesting and show very well the evolution of the situation.
And Bernard, this morning in the opening session, we were hearing that in 1924, there were less than 2 billion people on the planet. So that's quadrupled in the last 100 years. Can you take us back to pre-1924, what the seed sector was like at that time?
At that time, the seed sector had already started because you had some companies that were pioneering in plant breeding and selling seeds, and we have companies in North America, in Europe, that were already developing new varieties with a real revolution in producing new varieties of plant. And of course, I have in mind in particular a very well-known company which was Villemorin, and I've been pioneering in making hybrids for wheat and things like that, and it's really something interesting.
And why was there a need for the International Seed Federation, which obviously that was created in 2002, but what was the need for at that time, and what was the vision?
When the federation was established, the first meeting took place in 1924, and the objective was to facilitate the international seed trade. And at that time it was only the herbage seed industry that was involved. It is interesting, and a few countries, but the objective was to establish rules for international seed trade and arbitration in order to facilitate the trade and to help companies to discuss and make the trade. It was mainly forage between Europe and North America.
And how has the vision changed over the last 100 years from its inception?
I think that the vision, the global vision, I would say, has not changed. The objective was to help developing the international seed trade and to develop rules for that. It was the objective in 1924, and it's still the objective in 2024. So that's really a very big change in the objectives. I think that something that is important to say is that at the beginning it was for the seed trade, ISF, FES was FES at that time, and I would say that in 1938 another association was created, which was Assancel. And the two associations at that time had not the same objectives. The FIS was involved in seed trade, and the Assancel was mainly working for the protection of intellectual property. And the relationship between the two associations was not extremely good because for the trade, many companies were willing to trade without paying royalties. So that the relations were not very good. And in fact, it was during the Congress in Rome that it was said that, okay, but we should work together because most now at that time, it was about 50 years ago. At that time, most of the seed companies were involved both in trade and breeding. And you say, we should not fight again and try to work together. So Assencel and FES, maybe that was one of your questions later on, but I'm going to continue and to say that the relation were becoming better and better, and at the end we said that we should have only one association and to merge Assencel and FIS.
Which of course was in 2002.
And that was done, formalized in 2002. And I think that it was a big step of progress, because really the relation between trade, breeding and protection of intellectual property was done at that time, and that was a very important step. It was not easy to do.
Well, we'll get into that next, because of course you were at the helm of ISF at the time. So what role did you play in that?
Excuse me?
What role did you play in the merger of the two?
What role I played? Oh, it's difficult to say. We were several people, but it has been easier for me, because before being the Secretary General of FES, I had been the President of Assencel.
Yes.
So I had good relation with both associations, of course. And with that double experience, it has been, I will not say easy, but it has been easier to make the merger. But the merger was not only a simple merger, because at that time we have also reviewed all the internal rules of the new association, which is of course now International Seed Federation and no longer FES. But it has been quite interesting and sometimes difficult. And we have had some people. I don't see. Of course, Orlando has been also quite active in that process, and it has not been. I think that has been helped by some present honorary life members like Orlando, that Selving Manning, and we were several people trying to facilitate the process.
If we go back a step and just looking at one of the chapters in the book on the global expansion of the seed sector that took place after the Second World War, can you share a little bit more about that?
About what?
About the global expansion of the seed sector, which really took off after the Second World War.
Yes, in fact, the international seed trade started quite early, because in 1924 it wasn't why FIS was established, but it has increased drastically during the last I would say 40 years for several reasons. And in particular, one of the reasons is that some regions of the world are in which it is easier to produce seeds. And so the companies are producing seeds in some countries and then exporting them in another country and re-exporting them in other. We have, for instance, the clear example of the Netherlands, where a lot of seeds are produced in different parts of the world. Then they are coming back to Netherlands, and then the Netherlands companies are selling them all over the world. And that, of course, are clearly increased the international seed trade at the world level. And it is, I would say, a quite interesting experience to have seen that. Just to give you an example, for instance, 40 years ago, we were all producing tomato seed in Taiwan. And then the seed were coming from Taiwan to Europe and then sold in the different other countries. And that's true for many other crops.
And if we talk about the book that you've got in your hand just now, Bernard, there's quite a number of chapters in the book that talk about global growth, and they shine a light in some of the stories around the regional seed associations around the world.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about, maybe share some insights of some of those regions and the work going on?
So the other seed associations in
Yes.
the world. Yes, in fact, ISF was working globally, but we were also in favor of having correspondents on different continents. And first we had APSA, was developed for Asia and Pacific Seed Association. I have to say as well that at the very beginning, some members of ISF were not really in favor of that. I was in favor, and I went to Chiang Mai in 1994, if I remember well, for the creation of APSA.
Mm-hmm.
And but at the beginning, the relation was not that easy. Yeah, now it's become, of course, much easier. And also, I have been personally involved, and it is written in that book, at the establishment of AFSTA for Africa, because I thought that it was important to try to help the African countries to develop their seed industry. And that has been very interesting. And François Burgot, who is in the room with us, has been very active to help me to establish AFSTA. And it has been at the beginning also a little difficult, but after that it was running quite smoothly.
And Bernard, can you share with everybody a little bit about your background? Because I was very fortunate enough to have a conversation with you ahead of this, and you've had an amazing career, and you've worked and travelled in so many amazing countries. Can you share a little bit about your why and what journey you've been on?
My background is a little, I would say, a little, I would not say strange, but in fact, I am an agronomist and my PhD in soil science. My PhD is on phosphorus in tropical soils. So nothing to do with seeds. But, you know, it is normal when you are working on soils, what you are doing is that to have crops growing on the soil. And in particular to add phosphorus in tropical soils. Without phosphorus, you have nothing to grow. And then from the soil you go to plant. And of course, from the plant you go to the seed. And it is amazing, but I was working for public research in Africa, from Gerdat, and in the plane from Paris to Quimper, on the journal Seed Le Monde, I saw Groupe Limagrin is looking for his production manager. And I applied, and I became production manager of Limagrin. So my first job in seed was seed production. And after that, I have been involved as a manager of a seed company involved in sugar beet breeding. Mm-hmm. And after that, the research director of Groupe Limagrin. And after 15 years of Limagrin, I decided to change because I was 50 years old, and it was time to change, and I applied for the ISF Secretariat, and I become the FES Secretary General. So it's a quite interesting and strange evolution in the life of somebody. Different works and different. That was.
Well, looking back over your career, what are some of the notable changes that you've seen in the wider seed sector in that time?
The evolution in the seed.
What are some of obviously one of the milestones we talked about was the merger of Assencel and FIS.
Yeah.
What notable changes did you see more widely in the seed sector?
In the seed sector, I don't. I think that what has been extremely important is the relation between the seed sector and the international organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And I will take the example, of course, of the relation and I would say the relation with ISTA and IPPC and the accreditation of seed companies for seed testing, for seed certification.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been a very important part of what I have worked in when I was Secretary General of ISF. And once again, as for all the changes, it has not been quite easy. And in particular, to get the ISTA accreditation, that took us at least 5 years, with meeting in different parts of the world, and I have been helped by Selving Manning in that Selving, and I remember with Selving we were in a meeting in Chiang Mai, in Thailand, and ISTA said, okay, we agree now, we are going to give you accreditation, but on your orange certificate you will put a stamp saying dependent lab. And we say, no way, we cannot put on the orange certificate dependent lab, because that would mean that we have a conflict of interest. So, and 2 years later, we had a meeting, and at a short majority, all the ISTA members accepted accreditation of the companies. And few years later, I was in the Congress of ISF in Brazil, and there was an ISTA stand. And they were promoting, they have in a plastic orange, and they said, get ISTA accredited to publish your orange certificates. And the number of members, the number of members of ISTA since accreditation has doubled. So that accreditation has been extremely useful for ISF, but also extremely useful for ISTA. So that was a very interesting experience.
I'm just looking back on some of the notes I took this morning. Michael Keller, in the opening session, he kept using the phrase, building bridges where there were borders, and that real important focus on collaboration. That's something you've obviously been part of yourself, and seeing the absolute need for that over the last few years that you've been involved with ISF.
Excuse me?
I was just pointing out this morning about that idea of working together and building bridges, and how important that's been to so much of the work that you've done on accreditation as well.
Yes, accreditation was extremely important, and also the contact with IPPC was extremely important, and the development of issues was also extremely important. And we started, that has been the beginning, was done by our Dutch colleagues for only vegetables, and step by step, it was not, once again, not easy. When you want to change things, it's never easy. And then to come from the Dutch associations to ISF, there was a little. I have to tell you that I was told at that time, we don't want to go to ISF because we don't want bureaucracy. So we have to say everything. And year after year, they have understood that it was not only bureaucracy but work. And we started by vegetables with one country, then with several countries, and well, at the end with all the crops. But as soon as you want something that has been established, you have always people thinking, but okay, but it will be more difficult. But it was also an interesting experience.
Well, Bernard, I'm going to pause and see if anyone in the audience would like to ask any questions. You've been bringing everybody in throughout the session.
Make comment.
We've got a hand raise over here. If I could ask you to wait till the microphone gets to you and introduce yourself, please. Oh.
Not working.
Is there another microphone? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, is this one working? Okay. Bernard, it's Susan Allen here. I'm Mike Zingel's daughter, and I'm from South Africa.
Yes.
So I think you would probably remember my father, and you might remember me. My dad is 85, so he's sort of, in the zone, shall we say. So, do you remember Mayford Seeds and South Africa? Anyway, you came to South Africa a few times.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yes, and you helped us a lot. And I would just like to say, I'm so glad you did that work in the ISTA accreditation, because South Africa's national testing lab lost its accreditation about a year ago.
Yeah.
As often happens when governments don't fund the agricultural sector correctly. And thank heavens we have, I think, 5 independent seed companies that are ISTA accredited. And if it weren't for that, we would be in major trouble. So I'd just like to say thank you.
Yeah, that's what we're done. And of course, I have been quite often in South Africa, and we have had a congress, an
Yes.
ISF congress in
Sun City
in Sun City.
2000.
It was a very well organized and interesting seed congress. Yes.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for your question. Would anyone else like to put a question to Bernard? Oh, we've got a gentleman in the
Anton.
back just here. Thank you.
Anton?
My name is Orlando de Ponti, past president of ISF. Bernard, you mentioned already the years of Asincel, and I think within Asincel, intellectual property was the number 1 on the agenda.
Yes.
Could you give some insights into the relation between, at that time, ISF and today ISF and UPOF?
Yes.
How that evolved over the years?
Yes, I think that the relation between, I think the seed associations and UPOF have evolved very, I would say, in a very interesting manner. And we have been, I would say, observers in UPOF, but we have been invited. I think with that started roughly, in fact, UPOF has been created at the request of Asincel. That's a very important point, because Asincel asked to have an organization to discuss intellectual property for seed. And that has been done in a congress of Asincel, and then that's been supported by the French government. And we had the first congress to develop UPOF, and then, of course, we have been observer in UPOF, and we have been very deeply involved in the modification of the UPOF Convention for the adoption of the 1991 Act of the UPOF Convention. And in fact, we proposed to UPOF to introduce the concept of essentially derived, the essential derivation, and I think that was good. But I have just a small anecdote on that. When we write the draft 1991 convention, the concept of essential derivation was based on the genome, was based on the genome and analysis of the genome. And that was really what we all had in mind. And the Japanese delegates say, oh, but to analyze the genome, it will be too much difficult. We can accept that. And after many discussions, it moved from the genome to the essential characteristics which were not defined. And that has made a lot of difficulties. The concept was there, it has been involved, and we are still discussing what is essential characteristics. And just because if the initial text would have been adopted, it was a threshold in the genome, it would have been done. But that a lot of things like that, and anecdote. François, you wanted to say something?
We've got another question.
Thank you, Bernard. François Burgot, I'm an honorary life member of AFSTA, African Seed Trade Association.
Me too.
I know. Of course. No, my question is about, we congratulated ourselves this morning about the fact that we feed billions of people. We are 80 countries in that Congress and so on. So I want to know how, in your point of view, you explain why the image of the seed sector at the world level is so bad even today. When you look at all the reports of the special rapporteur on the right to food from the very beginning, they are always against the seed industry. When you look at all the UN declarations, there are always some chapters against the seed industry. So how you explain in this contradiction in a way?
It's not easy, but I think one of the main reasons of that contradiction is the fact that there is a seed industry, but there are people that against capitalism and large seed companies. And in fact, very often there is a link made between large companies wanting to appropriate germplasm and the real seed activities. And as we said this morning, as I said yesterday evening, in fact, the role of ISF now is really to facilitate international seed trade so that all the farmers at the world level would have varieties facilitating sustainable agriculture. That is really what the seed industry wants to do, but we have a lot of opponents, mainly on ideological reasons, that are not in favor of that. But it is a reason why I see that, I would say, discrepancy between what we are doing and what some international organizations are saying, pushed by a lot of NGOs.
Bernard, we're about to run out of time, so I'd just like to finish by asking you, what excites you about the future, and what should the next 100 years look like? I mean, that's a big question for 40 seconds, but what's one thing that really excites you about the future?
What will be the next 100 years? I think that due to the evolution of technology, we will be developing new varieties which were more, I would say, in favor of environment. We are doing that, and the seed industry will continue, and we need better seed for varieties that are adapted to climate change. And I see that for the next 100 years we will continue to have a large market of the seed industry and going into that direction.
Thank you so much, Bernard. I'm afraid we're out of time, and can I just thank you so much for sharing an insight into the book and your an amazing career today. Thank you.
Thank you. And if the people want to have the book signed, it's...
Yes, we're going to be doing a book signing at the Future Generation Corner, so do head over and Bernard will be signing copies. Thank you very much.
Thank you.